Rob Krecak, welcome to the show. Welcome to Cook's Table. Thank you so much for joining us today. Excited to hear from you and learn from your wisdom.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, Andrew. Really appreciate you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity, and also looking forward to learning from you. So this will be
Yeah,
fun.
well, would love to make this as conversational as we want it, but I will direct us kind of in some intentional questions. And you are center stage now. We are so glad to have you as a subject matter expert in so many different ways and an entrepreneur of 10x. I saw on your LinkedIn, and just so many different diverse experience. Why don't you just start off with doing a better job of introducing yourself than I just did? Give us the high flyby of kind of your career journey so far, and give the audience an idea of who they're talking to.
Yeah, yeah. Well, happy to kind of break that down. So I started my career in finance as a sell-side equity research analyst, and I covered medical device and pharmaceutical stocks. And so my job in that role was to listen to quarterly earnings reports and, write financial reports and make financial models for a living. And so that was a great way for me to understand the public markets, how to analyze companies, what questions to ask, and really, what drives value at companies essentially. But I knew that kind of the corporate world I didn't really think was for me. And so I ended up starting my first business while I was working this 60-hour a week day job. It was an Anytime Fitness franchise.
Wow.
And then once that business was doing well enough for me to quit my day job, I quit. I did like 6 months of traveling around the world, which was super fun. And then ended up owning three of those Anytime Fitness health clubs, and then later ended up owning four U Break I Fix cell phone repair stores. And then I had two tech startups. One was related to AI, and I've since sold all those companies and now do fractional CFO and fractional integrator consulting for companies. So I always joke that I kind of have career ADD. I did finance and then gyms and then cell phone repair or computer repair. And like, those are, I mean, think about it, those are like totally, basically completely opposite
Right.
industries and roles and stuff. But I really liked all of them. And, it's allowed me to help a wide variety of companies today.
That's so great, and such a unique journey. I feel like you said. How the heck did you get into franchises initially? Like where did that even come on the radar for you?
Yeah, so in college, I wrote so like one of my classes was essentially like write a business plan for credit. I mean, that was not the name of the class, but that's essentially what it was. And so I wrote a business plan to open up a gym because I knew I really loved working out and I
Hmm.
loved helping people. And then once I started my day job, I realized I don't have time to do all this crap. Like I don't have time to like start a gym from scratch and do all the things. So I'm like, well, maybe a franchise would be a good option for me. And so I basically pared it down to two franchises that I could afford. At the time, it was Anytime Fitness and Snap Fitness.
Okay.
And, so I invested in my first Anytime Fitness in 2010 and then opened up the doors on January 21st of 2011. And, the rest is history. So I felt like it was such a good step for me to become a first time entrepreneur with the franchise. And, they essentially had a business plan and I executed it. And
Hmm.
that worked out well for me.
Yeah. Did you have to do the due diligence on like where you were going to place these locations, or was that all done for you?
Oh yeah, no, I actually did an analysis and, because I'm an analyst, so
Right.
I basically did the research. And, this was again in like 2008 when I started this research. So I actually did due diligence for like a couple years. And then I actually, it took me a while to open it because I had to get approval from my employer because based on these SEC laws, you can't have a conflict of interest with
Wow.
an outside business interest and what stocks you cover,
Sure.
which fitness obviously doesn't conflict with medical devices or pharmaceuticals, but my employer had to approve my business interest and they didn't do it for a couple of years. So I
Wow.
essentially had some time to, research, which was great. But basically I bought a report that showed me the percentage of population that would that would be a member of a health club by state. And then I went to these different markets and then I called up all the gyms in the area and found out how many members they had. And I essentially calculated the market share in each area. And then I based my decision on the fact that I thought my market only was like 50% penetrated. Like, in other words, like 50% of the market was essentially not serviced.
Right.
And it ended up being a great call and a great analysis because I came in and, we ended up having a really good, having a really good club and gained a ton of market share. And it was super profitable.
Wow. So were they all in the same general vicinity, or were you in different cities, or what did that look like?
They were literally in different states. So I
Oh
owned
wow.
one anytime in Wisconsin, another one in Illinois, Northern Illinois, and then the third one in Arkansas.
Wait,
And those
what?
other in Arkansas, yeah.
No way. Did we talk about the fact that I'm from Arkansas originally?
Yeah, you told me that. And so my club is in Springdale, pretty
Whoa,
close
that's
to Bentonville and
crazy.
stuff.
It probably,
Yeah,
I mean, it's still there, I'm assuming, right?
it is. Yeah, as far
Yeah.
as I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So would you like fly down to like Northwest Arkansas quite a bit to do stuff or what?
Yeah. So I mean, what happened was the reason I started the club from scratch in Wisconsin, and that was great, but it was very capital intensive. It was like $83,000 for the build out, over 100 grand for the equipment. And like I bought all that new. And so it was like, wow, this is eating up a ton of cash. So my thought process was, how can I buy an existing club
Mm,
essentially for way less money and, still get like essentially buy something close to break even and then turn it around. So
sure.
that's exactly what I did for the clubs 2 and 3. I looked literally in the whole United States, found good, targets to acquire, and then ended up acquiring them. And for the Arkansas one, it was kind of a crazy story because I literally knew zero humans, and in this area, I didn't know anyone at all. I buy this club. The prior owner had someone managing it, which, you would think that they would.
Right.
But the day that the owner told the existing manager that it was being sold, he literally walked out of the business and they were having a big sale. He walked out of the business and never came back.
Whoa.
And so I had basically zero smooth handoff, and those owners were like in another state. So I basically packed my car with a suitcase full of stuff and an air mattress, and I drove 13 hours to Arkansas, and then knew no one, had no, smooth handoff from anyone, no prior owner, no prior manager, and basically slept under the desk for the first 3 or 4 days until I found housing and just ran the club, 7 days a week for like the first month to get everything situated.
Unreal. So wait, so was this still when I mean, this surely was after you had finished up at your first job doing the 60-hour weeks, or did you just take time off, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so I opened the first club and then there was about a year of overlap. Um was it a year? Yeah. Yeah. I opened the first club. There was about a little over a year of overlap where I did that job and had the club. And then after that year, it was profitable enough where I could quit. It wasn't like crazy profitable, but I was trying to live cheaply at the time.
Right.
So I quit and then I traveled around the world for like 6 months. I went to Central America, South America, and Europe and just did a ton of traveling because I said to myself, like, I'm like 29 years old. I have no mortgage. I have no family. I have no girlfriend. This is my time to like do this stuff. So I'm
Mhm.
going to travel around and it was amazing. It was an amazing time. Like I definitely wouldn't take it back for anything. And then once I came back to the United States, I evaluated this club in Arkansas, um, and then ended up buying that,
Okay.
shortly after all that travel, I guess.
Yeah,
So
so you were
I
already
wasn't working the day job at the time.
your first one would have been very self-sufficient if you were able to travel around for that long without, being in person at your first location. So then an easy it wasn't like too crazy to think about going to Springdale for a while. Is that a
Totally.
fair assessment?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I mean, first of all, the Anytime Fitness business model is dead simple, and that's one
Okay.
of the things that I really like about it. It's a very easy business model on purpose. The
Yeah,
other thing is I feel like I run systems well and, set clear expectations and have things documented reasonably well. And the third thing is I had a really good manager at the time.
sure.
He actually ended up moving to Arkansas and running my Arkansas club from Wisconsin,
Whoa,
which was amazing.
whoa.
And then he also ended up running my club in Illinois. So he stuck with me through all this. He was, really great guy.
Well,
So it was, I certainly had to have that was, I guess, another thing that was really crazy about the first business too is within like a 6 month period, I opened up my business, s- took level 3 of the CFA for the second time and ended up passing it.
mm,
And I had to fire my first manager at my gym and my business
wow,
and get a new one in. And that all happened in like a 6 month time frame.
gosh,
So I was just like, this is totally like I couldn't believe that I successfully passed the CFA, the level 3, and I got a good manager in there. That was like a miracle.
that's crazy. Wow. Talk about an adventure. I mean, there's so many elements of this that are just screaming adventure at me that I want to ask you about. I'm curious though about the Arkansas thing. Like most people, so as I've shared with you, I guess probably on our call initially, um, I am from Milwaukee. I grew up partially in Milwaukee, kind of your neck of the woods. And then when I was 10, we
Yeah.
moved to Arkansas. And I would say, I don't think my parents even knew really where Arkansas was on the map before it came up as a job opportunity for my dad. And so it's one of those things where the people in the north, I don't even know how people from Chicago or Milwaukee like know about Arkansas. If they'd mentioned it, I'm like, wow, like what do you know? Like obviously it's growing in popularity now, but how
Yeah.
did that even? I mean, what was it? Just I guess how did that come on the radar for you? Obviously, you were doing a lot of research, but um,
There was this yeah, I totally agree with you that like I think the only reason that people in Milwaukee know about Arkansas is like Walmart,
yes, right,
that's
right,
about it. Um, so there was this Anytime Fitness had this like internal network of clubs that were for sale, and I just started doing due diligence. Like I would just every week new ones would come for sale. I would just call people. I travel to like Atlanta, other areas, looking at clubs all over. And, I just after knowing what I knew about running the first one, I just decided this was the best financial option.
yeah,
And at the time, it didn't matter that it was far away because I was like, well, I'm just going to move there and run the club and then find a manager and hire one and then I'll do it again, you
right,
know?
right.
So that's how I got there. I guess it was a good financial, it had a good potential return on investment. Let's put it that way.
With Northwest Arkansas growing as much as it has, and being from there, 2.5 years back, even as recently as that, like I've got a fairly good pulse still with a lot of friends still in that area. I mean, it is exploding, and I think you were on the. I mean, was this you said 2010 ish was
So,
around that
so this is
time?
about 2012 or 13, or
2012 or
I think it was
13.
like late 2012 that I acquired it. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it was still probably on the come up at that point. I mean, there's just been exponential growth in that
Uh,
area of, population growth and money
right.
injected into it from Walmart and that type of thing. I can imagine that it was just a highly beneficial gig for a bit there. Probably still
Yeah.
is. But what's your least favorite thing and your favorite thing about Arkansas from the time and the business that you've done in that state? Do you have a sense for that?
Least favorite thing?
Well, if you have one, that's good if you don't.
I don't, I mean, honestly, like I really walked away with a very positive
Okay.
outlook about it. I mean, I'd never lived in the South or really even visited the South for any appreciable amount of time before that. And so
Sure.
I did immediately experience that Southern hospitality is a real thing, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Everyone was super friendly. I really, the members at the club were super nice. I mean, it was super nice. And so I don't really have a huge negative,
Yeah. Right.
other that it just was far away, but
Yeah.
that's just, it is what it is. And I really liked so many things about it. Beautiful weather and beautiful landscapes, super nice people, not very expensive compared to, like a Chicago or something.
Mhm.
There's just a lot of things. And it was funny, you know, I can't, I, there was like one or two times when I was there that it almost like there was like a sprinkling of snow, like the whole city
Oh,
shut down,
yeah.
and you're just like, oh, you're not used to this here. Like this is Milwaukee, like this is a nothing.
Yeah,
So it's just kind of funny how they had a different outlook on snow and all that stuff. Not
sure.
bad, just different.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. Well, it's that's a cool little nugget from your story about Arkansas. Obviously, I'm a big Arkansas guy. I feel like more people need to know about the great state that it is. It's kind of a hidden gem, but
Yeah.
also it kind of needs to stay hidden. I think, in my mind, it's like better for the rest of us who know about it. If you're an outdoors guy at all, I feel like it's like a mecca, even more so now than it was probably at that time. But in
Mm.
terms of like mountain biking and that type of thing, it's blowing up. It's crazy. But
What
um,
are some of your favorite things to do outside?
I enjoy camping, enjoy, yeah, a
Nice.
wide range of, like, social sports, grew up playing a lot of ultimate frisbee, enjoy
Yeah,
the
we talked
beach.
about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
enjoy, like, spike ball, pickleball, those types of more social, more informal sports. But I do get pretty serious, pretty competitive, and then I'm actually low key. This is probably the first time this is coming out on the podcast, but I am a bit of a rollerblader actually. So grew up in
Oh.
Milwaukee, where I was on an ice rink for a lot of the winter. Like
Oh
hockey, and
yeah.
enjoying that. But you move to Arkansas, and speaking of Arkansas, it's just too hot down there to justify any kind of investment in a nice rink. So there's one ice rink in all of Little Rock, Central Arkansas, where I grew up, and it was not very nice, not very nice at all.
Oh,
So I ended up, in college sometime going, man, I'd like to brush those skills off. I haven't like experienced rollerblade ice skating, in a long time. I'm gonna buy myself a pair of rollerblades. So sometime in the middle of passing my CPA exams, as a reward for passing one of them, I guess I bought myself a pair of rollerblades and really have enjoyed it.
heck
So
yeah.
for example,
That's
I
great.
actually just got back out there last weekend and did 10 miles on the lakefront trail here in Chicago. So that was really fun.
Wow.
Until it was really fun until I made it to like Navy Pier area and turned around and it got a face full of wind. And I thought this second 5 miles is going to be brutal, and it was. But
Well, I'm sure.
it was
That's a
great.
cool area though to go rollerblading down by the lake there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great.
it was so nice. Weather was great. So, but I know that activity and being active is a big part of your life, and I can't help but hear the emphasis on gyms, and think about Alex Hormozy and sleeping in your gym. Sleeping in your gym. Do you know much about Alex Hormozy? Have you seen any of his stuff?
For sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Acquisition.com. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. Gym
gym
lunch.
launch and all that. I just hear in your story like some of the stuff that I've heard briefly from him on certain YouTube channels or what have you. But yeah, I mean, I mean, what was the draw from a personal perspective into the gym world, and maybe what do you like? What draws you to fitness in general? Because I saw some stuff on your website about that too. Obviously, that's more of a
Yeah.
personal question, but
I just really love it. I don't know.
yeah,
I started lifting weights and working out the summer before my freshman year of
okay,
high school. And I just always liked the feeling of being healthy and working out and being fit, I guess. And it just gives me energy and just makes you feel powerful as a person, I guess. And
yeah,
and I just wanted other people to have that. And I like helping people a lot. And so I thought, well, why not combine something that I really enjoy and helping people? Those two seem like a good mix. And I had actually gotten a personal training certification in college, American Council on Exercise one, and then I ended up getting a bunch of like CrossFit certifications and all these other ones and stuff. And I just thought that was pretty cool. So I wanted to share that with other people, and just something I was really passionate about, and felt like why if I can share that with other people and make money doing it, like it's a win for everyone, I guess.
yeah. So you spent some time as a personal trainer, like getting clients that way and doing that work during
Yeah,
college. Okay,
yeah, I did.
okay.
Yeah,
That's really cool. Yeah, it certainly makes sense why you ended up in the gym world. But then to go from that to you break I fix, that must have just been strictly a business decision at that point. Or do you have a special fascination with smartphones?
I mean, I'm like I have this very weird mosaic of interests.
Okay,
So I'm a nerd. Like I'm a real nerd. Like I built my first computer in middle school, and this
cool.
was in like the mid '90s. But no one even had a cell phone, let alone or a computer.
Was
So
it Linux? Was it Linux?
no, it was Windows. It was
Okay,
DOS. It was DOS based.
Okay.
Or no, not at that time. I guess the first family computer was DOS based, but by the time that I built that computer, I think it was Windows 95. So,
Cool. Okay.
um, but yeah, I mean, obviously I had my dad's help, to, help at the time and everything. And, but I love computers and technology, and I think that that stuff's amazing. And my dad really got me into that because he liked that stuff. And
Cool.
so, I thought, okay, well, everyone has a smartphone. Everyone breaks their smartphone all the time. You need to get it fixed. Sometimes it's not even optional to get it fixed if you want the data. So, I was like, well, this seems like a pretty good business model. And, I ended up investing in four cell phone repair stores in the Milwaukee area.
Okay. So those were all more local, so you could get to them
Yeah.
easier, I suppose. But
Yeah. I
yeah,
did not want four stores in different states and all that stuff. That was kind of the thought process was I should invest in a franchise that's not brand new, but is new enough where I can get a whole territory
sure.
and, have it be more convenient than three states
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, I want to dive into entrepreneurship a little bit more, but before I do, and I forget, I was just it's crazy that you said talking about traveling the world like you did, the
Mm,
6 months overseas, because I was actually talking to or hearing somebody else talk about that very thing this week, and I think for my audience out there, I'm hoping to talk to the younger generation, up and coming entrepreneurs, people who are
mm,
adventurous at heart. They have the dream of something more in their life, right? How
mhm.
important is it to get outside of your comfort zone with location changes, like for the budding entrepreneur, for the person who is trying to make something more of their life than maybe they ever thought they could from coming from their hometown? Would you have insights on that? What were your takeaways from that trip or that time away?
Yeah, I mean, oh my gosh, there's so many. Um, where do I even begin? Well,
Yeah,
so I really like traveling and I like experiencing other cultures because I just like different things, things that are not normal, or
mhm,
that are novel, right? And my it's my goal to see one quarter of the world's countries. That'd be about 52 countries, and I
okay,
think I'm up to 22 right now, so
wow,
not quite half the way to more toward my goal. But I think it's extremely valuable to experience other cultures. And when I was in college, I actually studied abroad in Oaxaca, Mexico for 3 weeks, and then I did a semester abroad in Madrid, Spain. And I mean, you know, that contr I ended up getting a major in Spanish in addition to, some other majors and stuff, and that is something that I like so much that we are currently teaching our son Spanish, so, like, I only speak to him in Spanish all the
whoa,
time since he
whoa,
was a month old, and, not only do I like it, it's cool, but and he goes to a Spanish-speaking daycare, where they only speak Spanish to him. And so I hope that he's truly bilingual, that, he can be bilingual and doesn't have to learn it the hard way like I did, because I don't have Spanish speaking parents or relatives or anything. And, I think that not just from a language perspective, but also just seeing, experiencing firsthand how the world is different than the United States, it really opens up your mind to the amount of possibilities, and
hmm,
also to what is, let's just say, what could be fixed in the United States. Because when you go abroad, you're like, oh my God, well, they don't do this thing this way here. And why do we do it this way in the United States? You start asking yourself those questions. And when you've experienced enough cultures abroad, you really start to see that there's some things about the United States that could be done differently. And it doesn't mean that the United States is bad, but there's just uh, many different perspectives on life that you don't truly understand. Like, you can't watch a video and understand that kind of stuff. You just have to experience it. You have to
wow,
be there in person. Um, it's like a roller coaster. I can tell you how amazing it is to be in a roller coaster, but you really don't get it until you go
right,
on the roller coaster. I think
right.
travel is the same way.
That makes sense. That's good. That's good advice. I feel like that's an allusion, or I mean, you're alluding to something that we may, if we have time, we'll see if we can make it. If we can make it to this point, I'm really curious. But talking about the 4-day work week, I can't imagine that that's not without its international influence on you. Like I feel like that's a European thing, but uh,
Totally. Yeah. So it's interesting. That. that concept did, start to be more prevalent in Europe, where let's just say the employer-employee relationship is just a little bit different than in the United States. And
Okay.
I do really believe that it is possible to give employees a 4-day work week. And what I mean by a 4-day work week is you work like 4 8-hour days, like 32 hours a week,
Okay.
not 40 hours a week compressed into 4 days. I do think that's very possible. And, uh, but a lot of companies they're not willing to be open-minded enough to consider that as a possibility. But I think the ones that do, really it becomes a massive competitive advantage because think about it. If you're if it, by the way, it'd be 4 8-hour days per week for the same pay. You're not
Right.
changing pay either, right? Just to be
Wow.
extra clear, because some
Yeah.
people are like, "Would you change my pay?" And it's like, no. But what it really comes down to, and this is like, we could go down a long rabbit hole for this, but uh a lot of people don't realize how much time they waste during their day on all kinds of stuff. And I'll just give myself as an example. So, when I was, let's just say I was living in Denver, but managing my stores uh, in Milwaukee from Denver, I wasn't there physically, right? But I was still managing them. And so I basically had all this time on my schedule because I didn't really have meetings or anything. So I was like, okay, well, I have this whole open day, no meetings. Like I'm going to be really productive. But if at the end of that day you would have asked me to write down a list of the things I accomplished, it really would have been very short. It would have been very small. And I was like, and then this kept happening, and I started asking myself, "Well, what is going on? Like, how is it
Mhm.
even possible that I have a whole day and I'm really not accomplishing a lot?" And so I started like researching all this productivity stuff and and time use. And what I realized is that the average person is just spending so much time reacting to things instead of being proactive. And, I ended up running hundreds and hundreds of experiments on myself, small experiments like, oh, what if I changed this thing on my calendar? What if I did this thing differently in how Windows is set up on my computer? And after all those like hundreds and hundreds of experiments, I realized what works for me as a not just an entrepreneur, but as like as a worker, right?
Mhm.
And I also think that this is very important because I do have diagnosed ADHD, and I do think that ADHD as a condition is becoming more prevalent.
Hmm.
And it took me a lot of self experimentation to figure out what works for me in terms of making myself productive. And I think that the average person, if they did the same, you can end up getting like 2 or 3 times more productive stuff done if you like optimize how your day is set up compared
Mhm.
to what you might be doing now. But a lot of people don't take the time to figure that out. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Totally, totally. Is that something, I mean, while we're here, let's just go for it. I wanna hear a little bit more about this. We'll get to some of the other stuff, but I had it at the end, but this is very interesting too. I think people will find this very compelling. But, is that something that you offer to your clients in terms of analysis of, like, their employee productivity and offering to coach them through that process of, "Here's how you do this, and here's why it would be a financial gain for your company," kinda thing? Is it that
Yes.
compelling for most companies?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and we'll just call it this area of study. I kind of came up with this term. I call it technology mindfulness, and it's
Okay.
understanding how technology impacts your mental health, relationships, and productivity at work. Like all those things, right? It's not just productivity. And absolutely, this is I would just say it's part of my, fractional CFO offering, right? Where I can come in and, work with either an executive or an executive team or a whole company and help them optimize all these processes. As an example, one of my former clients, he's like, just show me what to do. Like, tell me all the things, blah, blah. So I took him through this process. And like a week later, he comes to me and he's like, Rob, I got to hand it to you. Like, this is probably the most helpful thing that you've done for me. And we've worked together for like 6 months. And he said,
Oh,
my wife even said something to me. She's like, you are the most present that I've seen you in a long time with our children,
wow.
which to me, that's like a huge win. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to state how important that is, at least to me. And so I do think that there, but the hard part about this technology mindful stuff I am extremely passionate about, but I admittedly have not found a way to explain it to people that resonates well with large groups of people. I
Okay.
don't know why. I think it's something where it's just it's so personal to people, like, 'cause if you're helping people understand how can use their technology differently, some people just aren't open to like changing that, even if it could help them, or they
Sure.
kind of feel defensive. And that's been my biggest frustration with this whole topic is how do I get more people to want to make these changes?
Hmm.
And I don't have the answer, honestly. I've
Sure.
spent a long time trying to think about that.
Yeah. So just to make it like uber practical, like this is talking about like um say certain hours of the day you just have a policy in place where, you're offline or whatever, and that's what helps you kind of get this extra productivity or whatever. Is that what I'm hearing from you? Like in broad brushstrokes?
Yeah, like, that's one perfect, great example, Andrew, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, but that's, like, one example of maybe 50 different interventions that you could do, like,
Okay.
and when and one of those things alone might make a significant, a somewhat meaningful difference, but, like, when you stack all 50 together, it's here's another example, I had a client who she was running for governor of Colorado. So
Wow.
this is like she was on the campaign trail. She was very busy, she was in the middle of her campaign for running for governor. And she said, I'm so swamped. I can't, I can't possibly manage all this stuff. Just help me out. Like do all the things for me. So we basically like just gutted, like, just did every intervention possible. We even, like, got her a different phone number. I mean, it was
Yeah.
like, this is, like, the maximum amount of things that you could do. But we measured the amount of time she was spending on her phone, because it's on screen time, on her screen time app, and what we found is that within a week, she was saving over 40 hours a week of screen time on her phone. 40
Unreal.
hours a week, a whole work week's worth of time in time saved on her phone.
Whoa.
So, like,
That's
that's what's possible. Now, she was obviously a very outlier user and very heavy user of her phone because of her all the stuff, right? But
sure.
that's what's it's so easy for the average person, in my opinion, to save 10 hours a week. Like, it's a
Yeah.
day a week is like a no-brainer for
Wow.
most people.
That's interesting you say that. I think recently I've implemented some just being creative and learning about myself, same similar vein to what you're saying, but tried to implement some new strategies to manage like notifications and time
Mm,
offline. And it's even just like maximizing my most productive hours of the day, like figuring what that is
yes.
for me. Like for me, as an example, I used to go to the gym first thing, which is most people's like that's a good decision for most people to make, like get it out of the way. But for me, I would get back from the gym and I would crash. Even if I had a meal, like I would
Oh,
just crash. And I knew that that was my window. That 3 hours of me going to the gym and showering and getting ready and everything, that was my window that I was missing of like my most productive time. And I know that from
nice.
historical data, like when I was in college and, even before. And so I've reclaimed that recently and just played with it. And I've seen like just unbelievable gains, where I don't turn my phone on, till a certain time in the day. I go to the gym later,
Yeah,
and it's like, to your point, I really do think I feel like I've gotten a whole day back, at least,
totally.
you know?
Yeah. It
So,
sounds like you're already doing a lot of the stuff that I suggest, Andrew. So that's great. And I love that. I love hearing that. And it sounds like you and I are thinking very similarly about a lot of these things. The issue is just a lot of people they don't see it in that way, or they don't even think to do those experiments. Yeah.
yeah, from your life experience, maybe put it in that perspective on this topic, for people to grab a hold of. What were some of the biggest things that you came away with learning about yourself in this area, that revolutionized your work life so far?
Yeah, and it's interesting because like Harvard Business Review did this study of like 100 productivity hacks, and this was the number one most beneficial.
Okay.
And I think it was for me as well. Is time blocking your calendar,
Yes.
and it what that means, and it's very similar to what you just described in that there's a lot of ways to do this. This isn't the only way, but like the way I do it is I figure out when I'm most productive in the day. For me, it's usually 8 to 11 a.m. I try to block that every day if possible. And then if I can't block that, then I block another 2 or 3 hour window in the day for me to do deep work.
Sure.
And during that time, what I'm doing is I'm definitely not taking meetings or phone calls. I, don't check my email. I even put my phone not on my desk. I literally put it face down on the ground behind me, so it's not even in my field of view.
Right.
And then that's my time to get shit done, get
Yep.
deep work done and, focus and do important stuff for my clients. And, if I don't do that, and I've experimented with it a lot. To me, like the minimum amount of hours is one, but I really prefer two or ideally three, like three
Yep.
continuous.
Yep.
Um, and what research shows is that like most people max out at about 3 or maybe 4 hours of deep work per day.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that you can't do more, but, like, your ability to really focus well dramatically, tapers off after 4 hours. So, and it's also just hard for me with my client schedule, blah, 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 to, like, block up more than 4 hours. But to me, that's been incredibly helpful. And doing that, and also if there's a empty spot in my schedule, like putting in not a meeting, but like, okay, what am I doing during this time? Like, am I checking my email? Am I making lunch? Am I doing something for a client? Am I driving somewhere? Like literally having basically every minute of every hour from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. blocked every day. And that says what I'm doing. It makes it like you just do what your calendar says then. Like
Yep.
you just do it, and then it makes it less likely that I will waste time. Does that
Gotcha.
make sense?
Totally. Yeah. No, I've gotten to probably like 70% on that, in my days. I still have this free time where, like I probably waste it because it's not blocked, but for the blocking that I've done, it has been tremendously helpful. And it removes a lot of the anxiety, the stress from the day to
Yeah.
just like be worrying about, oh, what should I be doing right now? Let me go check my to-do list. What was that again like that I had? Oh, let me get my phone out to check because it's on my
Yeah.
phone and then oh, there's a notification, like and the rest is history.
And I think a couple other totally like everything you said. A couple other kind of hacks, or not hacks, but like best practices related
Yeah.
to that are I do take 10 minutes, just like 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning of every week to just plan out the week.
Okay.
And then every day I'm usually, deciding what, if I have an open space, let's say it's for a client, right? It's like, okay, what I ask myself this, like I literally like take a second, not a second, but like minutes to think about like, okay, what should I be doing during this time to provide the most value for my client? Like what one activity, provides the most value? And I'm not saying I'm perfect at that, but
Right.
even if I'm just deliberate about it every week and I, try to do my best with that and make that a focal point, I mean, that is better than 99% of other people who are just reacting to their email every day, and
Yes.
that sets me apart, I think.
Yes, 1,000%. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this about your deep work. For those out there who are thinking about kind of being more intentional about deep work, maybe see a need for it. Um, do you take breaks every hour or on some kind of cadence to not check your phone, but just reset your brain? Or are you able to power through for 3 hours at a crack without even taking a break?
I usually I'm usually my wife jokes that I'm always eating because I'm always eating. So
Nice.
really, I take inadvertent breaks to either go to the bathroom or eat something. But like
Sure.
if I'm doing, if I'm in flow, like here's
Yep.
another statistic. I love all the data about this. That's why
Yeah.
like I'll throw one shot. So like when you're in flow, you're up to 500% more productive than when you're not in flow.
Whoa.
500,
Whoa.
5x. That's like all these executive studies show this. But the issue is when you're in flow and then you get interrupted, it takes you on average 26 minutes to get back into flow.
Okay.
So basically, like if I'm like let's say for instance I'm making a financial model, like that's a great, I would love to have 3 hours straight because when I'm doing that and I'm like going really well, I don't want to stop. Like I might just take a quick bathroom break, but I will probably just forget about eating, sort of not on purpose, but just because I'm like, okay, like this is all coming together great,
Yeah.
and I'm just
Yeah.
going. So it really
Wow.
depends on how what I'm doing is going, but if I'm it really in flow, I really try to do everything possible not to interrupt it.
Man, Rob, I resonate with that so much. I mean, I do try to take breaks, but I also realized recently that my breaks are like basically me just changing positions and still thinking about what I'm thinking about, still thinking about the project at hand, but really like really wanting to get back to it as soon as possible, and
Yeah.
and realizing that that's yeah. I mean, I think people I wish that more people understood what it was really like to be in the flow state. I think that I hit it briefly at times, and I'm getting better and better as I kind of like learn more about myself and learn how I'm wired and learn what I really am excelling at and really good at, really gifted to do. But I think there's a ton of people out there who just don't even know what that feels like. Like they just maybe they're in a job that doesn't quite fit their gifting or, any number of things, but they've never experienced what that's like to truly want to work 3 hours at a crack without even stopping, you know?
Well, 1,000,000% agree. And here's again more data about why. Here's how that's can totally be true. I think that 99.9% of the US population never gets in flow. Because again, if you get interrupted in flow, it takes you 26 minutes to get back into it. This company called Rescue Time did this study about how often people check their inboxes,
Mm.
both messaging inboxes and email. And what they found is that they check them once every 6 minutes when they're
Oh
during the work
gosh.
hours. Once every 6 minutes.
Oof.
So basically, like no one, then that no one is ever in flow because you're interrupting yourself every 6 minutes to
Right.
check your email. So unless you're like super deliberate about this, like it sounds like you are, and I try to be. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but like you're never getting in flow. You're never
Right,
getting in flow
right.
ever.
Yeah. Wow. That's 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 really good, and what a value add, like, truly, like, I this all comes back to the 4-day work week, like, what you're saying here really just enables companies to consider a 4-day work week without a decrease in productivity, correct? Is that kind of the bottom line of this? Like
Exactly. So
okay,
it's like if we all collectively agree, we're gonna essentially try to be about 20% more productive and
right,
get 5 days worth of work done in 4 days because of doing all the things that we just talked about for the last 10 minutes, and we do it, why shouldn't we work 4 days? Like
right,
what
right,
okay, like I think that's great. It's and then you and here's another really important part. I actually learned this because I read this book about police officers, and
okay,
this guy is a psychologist who was a police officer, and he studied how police officers' nervous systems react to being on the job. And what he found essentially is that when you're like, let's say you're a police officer and you're on assignment and you're like roaming the streets and you could be shot at any time or whatever. Like that's a very, your body's in this fight or flight state, right? And so when you're a police officer, a lot of times if you're in the field, you're in this heightened state of awareness for an extended period of time, for the whole time you're in the field because it
right,
keeps you alive.
mhm,
Well, what he found is that it takes 36 hours for you to fully downregulate and get to a normal nervous system state. Here's what's happening, or what I believe is happening to the average white collar worker. When they check their email, for instance, that all this data shows that induces stress, and all these other technologies induce stress. And so the policeman and the person that's a white collar worker are actually, in my opinion, both in a state of fight or flight. They just don't. The white collar worker just doesn't realize it. And
right,
so, why this is all relevant to the 4-day work week is if the average white collar worker is in fight or flight all the time, and they only work and they work 5 days a week, basically they're never recovering. Like by the time the second half of Sunday comes and they're in a regular autonomic state or regular nervous system state, they're going back to work on Monday. So
right.
if you have this extra day of time where your nervous system recovers, you actually become a better employee on Tuesday or whatever day you come back to work when you have the 3-day weekend.
Wow.
And this is all backed up by science.
That's crazy. So what is the number on the amount of hours it takes once you reach that stable position of your nervous system? What does it then take to rebuild adequately? Is there a number on that? Like, is there a way to tell, like, it takes 24 full hours or it takes, you know?
Well, here's what's interesting. So, I will tell you about there's all these camps that are like, it's like a digital detox camp where you go if you've been using technology too much. And there's many different ones with different names, blah blah blah, all these things. Basically what happens is these people who are, legitimately addicted to technology and their cell phone or other technologies, they go to these camps, they have no technology use at all. And depending on the camp, most of them have no technology use. And what the people who go, and I have not, personally experienced this, but I'm just reading, I'm telling you about what I've heard about them.
Sure.
Um, but when people go to these camps, what I hear is that they really start to feel like they're in a more relaxed state after about a full week of time. So, and it's also very interesting when you look at data about when people take a vacation, right? Like if someone takes a vacation, there's very similar data that shows the same thing. It really takes you about a full week on a vacation to like get out of work mode, but if you only take a week vacation, then basically by the end of your vacation, you're right, you're ramping right back up. So it's like that's sort of evidence or data that would show that you should really, if possible, I'm not saying you can, but like if you
Right.
can take a 2-week vacation, it's actually way more beneficial than just a week.
Wow. That's crazy. Okay. Yeah, I'm loving this. I mean, have you thought about well, I'll back up and say I saw a lot of articles on this on your website, and so I know you've done a lot of, like, publishing of this already, but have you thought about making a whole 'nother, like, service offering or advising? Maybe you have something like this, but around this topic, it seems like you could monetize this even more than just adding it to your current fractional CFO offering.
I mean, look, man, if you know how I can do that, I would love to collaborate with you after this because honestly, Andrew, I spent 2 years full time trying to figure out how to monetize this. And
Okay.
this was a bunch of years ago. So, it's a very different world now. But I was not able to monetize it. Honestly, it
Yeah.
was, it was
Okay.
not a success.
Okay.
And look, I would love to be able to like, I really would love to chat with you after this because
Yeah.
I do think it's a different world now because even in
Sure.
the last 30 days, there's been a couple landmark lawsuits against Meta and Google or Alphabet about all these algorithmic, like from YouTube and Instagram and Facebook about how there's these algorithms essentially addict people,
Yep.
and these companies lost, like Meta and Google and Alphabet lost,
Yeah.
and so I do think I'm not, I mean, I'm really happy for those plaintiffs, but what I'm more happy about is we're finally starting to change the narrative about all this stuff about technology and its impact on humanity. I literally saw this over 6 years ago. I wrote a blog post about this and started talking about my friends. I'm like, I think social media is super bad for you, like mental health wise. I
Yep.
literally started talking about this over half a decade ago, and the people at the time are like, Rob, I think that's crazy. And now it's finally proven
Yeah.
that that's the case. And
Wow.
so I do think it's changing the narrative and changing public perception. And my ultimate hope is that by the time our son wants a cell phone in about 10 years, that we will have as a society have moved past children using social media as the main way to communicate. I really hope for my son that that's what happens.
Yeah.
Among many other reasons.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I mean, it is compelling, and maybe it's because you're preaching to the choir here, and I've had my share of ups and downs with it, and experimentation of myself, like you were talking about. I don't know, but I do think that, yeah, it seems like there's more and more. It's more and more in vogue to be off social media at this point. Like
Mm,
people say, oh, I'm at least in my friend circle, and maybe the younger
awesome.
generation too. But it's like, oh yeah, I'm proudly off social media, or something like that. So, like, more power to them, and I want to emulate that as much as I possibly can. Here we are on
Yeah,
a podcast, which is then going to end up being promoted on social
on
media.
social
So
media.
what can you do? But man, I just think it's so important, so important. Um, that's awesome. Let's come back to that. We can talk more about that at some point. I think that was really important for at least the audience to start thinking about some of those concepts. They're going to get exposed to it and go, yeah, maybe this is something you need to look more into. If people out there are interested in learning more about what Rob has covered in this, I do recommend you go to his website. What's that website, Rob? For those
Yeah, it's
listening, Humans
humansfirst.us. Humansfirst.us.
humansfirst.us. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there was a wealth of information on there that I was not able to fully digest even before this, but I did see a lot there, so that was awesome. Um, let's go back to your general entrepreneurial journey, and then I do want to cover before we end this too. I want to cover a little bit about what you currently offer for those out there who may be looking for a fractional CFO. But love to ask people about their entrepreneurial story, and we've covered a lot of yours, but thinking about the themes that have already come out, like you were a finance guy, but you also had, this aspiration for franchises eventually. You traveled the world, like there is this adventurousness. Where does that come from for you? Was there a moment early on where you were like you recognized that about yourself? Was that a parent thing? Like were your parents into that kind of thing?
No, no, I mean, my parents, they don't travel that much other than to like see my sister and I. They did come to see me in Spain, which was amazing.
Hmm.
Um, Honestly, so like I've read a lot of books about ADHD
Okay.
and, its impact on humanity and myself. And I think the most helpful book by far was Scattered Minds by Gabor Mate.
Okay.
But basically in the book, you start to see all the patterns that ADHD people have. And I think I exhibit a lot of them. And one of them is this restlessness or want to travel. And so I do think it's sort of like it's something that's kind of hardwired and comes along with my ADHD. And I also just feel like I like adventure and just new
Hmm.
novel things. So that's why I kind of traveled abroad for just 3 weeks, into Oaxaca, Mexico when I was in college because I wanted it. It was sort of like a test run. I was like, okay, well, if I like this, then, maybe I'll do a whole semester. But if I don't like it, then maybe I'll not do a semester. And
Sure.
obviously I loved it. So I ended up doing the semester in Spain. And I just it kind of goes back to, experiencing these different worlds and, especially if you want to learn another language, I mean, you really in my opinion, like for instance, when I went to Spain, I think I learned more Spanish in 6 months in Spain than all my years of schooling combined,
Mm.
than like 15 years of school combined
Yep.
before that
Yep.
in 6 months.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. I actually was a Spanish minor in college and gave it
Oh,
up
cool.
prematurely because I knew at a given point I had done all the grammar classes. I had done all of the, the syntax and all the background behind the language. And I knew the last few classes were like just literature based or whatever, and they weren't really going to push me forward. The only thing that would push me forward is a commitment to speak it more regularly or immerse
Mm.
myself, right? And at that point, I think I just kind of thought, not the season right now. I don't have time to go full bore into this, so I'm just going to go ahead and do something that's a little more time effective. But I totally resonate with that. It's like there's still this dream in me a little bit of like, man, it'd be fun to fully immerse in another language, speak another culture that speaks a different language, to do that. So
¿Por qué no lo puedes hacer ahora? Puedes
I
viajar a
know.
otro país donde toda la
Sí,
gente
sí.
habla español.
It's on the mind. I will not admit, or I will not deny it's on the mind. We'll admit. So we'll see. We'll see. You might catch me somewhere else the next time we talk. But um, yeah, I guess I know you've had different chapters, and I think there's for those out there listening who maybe feel like they have some type of desire for that adventure, some type of desire for entrepreneurship. Maybe they don't understand themselves quite yet in that
Mm.
regard, but maybe they've gone to college and then they've gotten a normal job. I say normal job. My buddy who's an entrepreneur also he calls it a job. You end up in a job and you're kind of questioning your life. Was there ever a question for you when you were in your first initial, your initial job in finance? Did you know before that you were going to end up as an entrepreneur, like working for yourself, or was that a gradual progression of self awareness that happened in those years?
I think I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but you can't be an entrepreneur with $0.
Right.
And you know, my parents were very supportive and they did help me a little bit financially with my first business, but the vast majority of the initial capital came from myself. So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, excuse me. Here was my thought process, and it was actually pretty simple. I knew, like let's say maybe a year into my job that I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I knew that the job could allow me to save up some money. And so one of the things that I really believe is that I don't want to have a lot of regrets in this
Mm.
world. And so I thought to myself, I don't want to be on my deathbed and wonder if, what would have happened if I would have opened up my gym? You know, like I didn't want to have to wonder that on my deathbed. And so, I ended up saving almost exactly $100,000 of my own money in my first 4 years of working at my job. And then I put that all into my gym, my first gym. And I said to myself when I, signed the paperwork, if I never see another penny of this $100,000 again, I'm okay with that. I mean,
Wow.
obviously I wouldn't like that, but I knew in my mind that I wouldn't, I wouldn't miss it because I wanted to do this and I believed in myself and I knew I could do it. And I did wanted to take that chance. And, and I guess here I am.
What did your parents instill in you that caused you to believe in yourself that much? And maybe it wasn't your parents. What did life instill in you that gave you that kind of confidence at age whatever age you were, late 20s, to take that jump?
Yeah, I was 28 when I signed the paperwork.
Uh,
My parents did a very good job of instilling confidence, but I think what was even more confidence inspiring to me, honestly, was talking to other business owners and just hearing the stuff that they would say or the way that they would think. And I was just like, I could do this better than you. No offense to you, but like, I don't think that you're that smart and I see that you're successful. So
okay.
why can't I be successful? Like,
Yep.
so it was sort of motivating to see other people and how they operated and what their level of success was and know that, okay, I feel like I could feel do as least as well as them, hopefully, and
Yep.
that gave me confidence.
Is it talent or is it confidence? I mean, like in the for those out there who are thinking about their own leap of faith, how much should they put on in either of those buckets, for long term success?
So, oh my gosh, how do I answer this? I I I I think that I would say like neither. I would say that
Okay.
like grit,
Mm,
so there's this book called Grit. Angela Duckworth wrote this book. It's called Grit. Think about it, grit is uh like sustained passion for something over a very long period of time. And to me, like that is probably one of the things that you makes you most successful. It's not necessarily if you're the smartest, it's not necessarily um you do have to be hardworking. I really do believe that, but you need like hard work plus just being doing that for a really, really long
yep.
in order to be successful. Like it just doesn't happen overnight. Like the thing that I really strongly dislike about social media today is that it just makes everyone think that like success is like this overnight thing. And it's just like, it's not how it is. And even if someone did get successful overnight, I'm not saying that they didn't work hard, but a lot of those people probably just got really, really lucky.
Sure.
And that's okay. Like, that's good for them. But the vast majority of people got to where they are through just really just grinding it out and hard work. And I think, being deliberate about picking up skills and getting better, right? Like having a growth mindset, not just there's a book called Mindset as well, which I think is super helpful. Having a growth mindset and just knowing that I just want to get 1/10 of 1% better every single day. Not even a percent, like 1/10 of 1%.
Yeah.
But interestingly, if you extrapolate that out, that 1/10 of 1% every single day for a year, you're nearly 50% better at the end of the year, almost
Whoa.
50%. And so
Wow.
like imagine if you do that then every year, right? 1/10 of a percent every single day for 10 years, it's like you're like exponentially better.
Yep.
So that's my goal is just to get up every day, be 0.1% better and just don't ever stop doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. Um, yeah, I resonate with that so much, and I also am inspired by that so much. I mean, I think there's so much that people can, and I tend to, oh, I don't know, like maybe put a premium on wiring, internal wiring, or gifting, or talent, and maybe that's natural for us who, to do that. and think that, oh, that's really what it comes down to is like, but at the end of the day, you want to put your focus on things that you can control. And some of those things
Yeah.
internally you can't control as much, and so you can't succumb to that victim mindset of, oh, I'm just this way, so I'll never be, or that. Like I was going to ask you, like, what about your own hardwiring makes you an effective entrepreneur? And that's a common question I ask. But the way that you just spun that around was through the lens of, yeah, like what are those things that you can control? How do you just get really, really smart about persistence and skill
Yeah.
development is what you're getting at. And that's something that anyone can do. Anyone who's listening right now can do that.
For sure, and there's a couple, so I would there's, like, so many things that I could say related to that, totally
Yeah.
agree with what you said. So there's this, Coursera course. I was just thinking about this yesterday,
Okay.
not even prompted by your question, just, like, in general. I was thinking about, like, how I would help my son do better in school, than I did, and, there's this Coursera course called Learning How to Learn.
Okay.
That's the name of the course, Learning How to Learn. And I think it was probably the one of the best, like, things that I ever learned, period, because it's the process of how you essentially become smarter, like how
Wow.
you transfer short-term information to long-term memory. That's essentially what intelligence is. And like it's all this collection of specific techniques in this course, right? Like all these different things like repetition, writing things down, etc. That's why so like after that course I literally was like, okay, well, what do I do, like how do I apply all this? So like that's why I write everything down in a notebook and I don't take digital notes, which everyone thinks is crazy, but like what all the research shows is that you remember about 36% more or 33% more when you write things down than when you take digital notes. Or when I read a book, like this to me is, I think, very unique to me. And I've never heard of anyone do anything quite like this. So here's what would happen. I would read a book. I would be like, a month later, if someone asked me, "Hey, what did you think about that book?" or "Tell me about that book," I could maybe tell them like 2 or 3 things that were useful, but that was it. And I was thinking to myself, "Well, why the F did I read this whole book and I spent hours, and like a month later I can basically tell you like 2 or 3 things." That seems like a
Right.
shitty return on my time, you know?
Totally. Totally.
So after I watched that course, I decided to be deliberate about taking notes, like very detailed notes, like anywhere from like some books, a handful of books, I would take like 50 notebook pages of notes and when
Whoa.
reading the book. And my goal was to basically replace reading the book by reading the notes. And what I determined is that it takes me about twice as long to read the book when taking the notes, but I remember about 10 times more information. So I'm actually getting like a 5 times better return on investment of my time.
Wow.
And so I basically only read books and take notes on them. Otherwise, I just don't read the books. It's like a
Sure.
waste of my time, if that makes
Wow.
sense.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So a lot of this comes down to when it comes to improving yourself, I can see where you're going with this. I mean, it's like, how do you learn? Identifying that, like maybe that's the most important aspect of who you are that you need to get straight, because that unlocks every other area of life that you want to get into, that you want to grow into, is that learning process. Would that be a fair statement?
Totally. Yeah. And well, yeah. So sorry, tying this back to your original question. So
Sure.
the reason that I know a lot of what I know is because I was so deliberate about, read. In the last like 7 years, I've read over 100 books and I took notes on almost every
Wow.
single one.
Wow.
And it's like that's why I know what I know, not because I have some superhuman memory or because I'm like have 180 IQ, is because I just grind it out and really put a lot of effort into it. But I like that too. Like I enjoy that. My wife kind of makes fun of me because like sometimes after what I would do is after reading a bunch of books and taking a bunch of notes, I would actually take notes on my notes to like
Okay.
further consolidate the concepts, but
Sure.
like that helped me, and that's
Wow.
so I feel like that was a very deliberate thing that I decided to do, and I don't have nearly as much time to do it anymore with a son, but
Yeah.
that's how I know what I know is by doing that process over and over.
Wow. Wow. That's fantastic, and I'm sure that that is such a distinguishing factor. I mean, I know there's a lot of high-powered fractional CFOs out there, fractional integrators, but when you have that much consistent learning, consistent information coming in, you've got that pedigree of, 100 books or whatever. I mean, uh, that even that just sets you ahead of, a lot of these entrepreneurs you work with probably are readers themselves. It's like you're able to resonate with them on these books quicker than a lot of people because you're like, "Oh, yeah, I read that, let me tell you about it," that type of thing. I can imagine that that's probably one good reason to do it if you're in client service of any kind of professional, high octane kind of clients is a lot of them are gonna be reading this stuff. So you better know what you're talking about. It's a good competitive advantage, I would assume. So, um,
Yeah, and it's just helpful to be able to like directly apply what I've learned to the client. Like, oh, hey, the reason
sure.
that we're doing this is blah 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 from this book, and here's why it was effective, and this is the principle behind it, and like, and they're like, oh, okay, cool,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Okay, all right. I wanna ask you. I want to give some time to this and dive into the fractional CFO stuff for two reasons. One, for business owners out there who may be watching and maybe thinking about that, needing somebody like you to come into their business, and two, for those out there who might want to get into what you're doing at some point, the next generation of fractional CFOs. So, first question on that topic, I guess, what do you wish that more operators, founders, business owners knew about what it's like to work with someone like you? What's inside the
Uh,
black box that they don't typically know?
yeah. Um, so I'll answer that with a little story about McDonald's. So McDonald's, a lot of people think McDonald's sells burgers, and they do, but what McDonald's really is a real estate company.
Sure.
And the way that McDonald's makes a lot of their profit is they bought the land that the McDonald's, businesses, restaurants sit on, and then they lease that land to the owners of the McDonald's restaurants.
Okay.
And so they have this whole real estate arm, in addition to all the royalties from the restaurants, et cetera. The reason that they did that is because in the very beginning of when McDonald's started, their finance guy basically showed them this strategy and why it would be helpful for the franchise. And that like literally changed the entire trajectory of the company and what
Wow.
it is today, right? And so like what people don't understand is that every entrepreneur is making decisions today that could influence their margins, their profitability, their scalability, their employees, well into the future. And and that's okay if you're making it by yourself. But what I like to say about how I work is I'm a strategic thought partner with you. I'm not just going to show you spreadsheets. I'm going to help you talk through difficult decisions that will affect all those things I just talked about and help you come up with a decision. Ultimately, you're making it, but hopefully help you come up with a decision that ultimately leads to a more scalable, more profitable company. And a lot of
Mm,
people don't realize that fractionals, they think fractional CFO just like make spreadsheets and talk about numbers. And we do that, but it's really the decision making process and how that impacts your company that I think is the most value add for what I do with clients.
sure. Sure. Wow. Yeah. No, that's a compelling story for sure. I definitely heard about that. But it's just surprising, because people would never guess about McDonald's in that regard. Um, I can see that the way that you framed it could make business owners at every stage go, "Man, I wish I had someone like Rob," like whether they're first starting out or if they're, at a more mature point in their business. But I know that there are cost constraints. There are, just you can't serve everyone in early stages, and early stages may not need you as much, But if someone was asking the question, what are the indicators in my business that I should be thinking about bringing someone like you in? What would you tell them on that? Revenue markers, I don't know, head count, different things like that. Are there things you talk about?
I mean, I guess there's so many like triggers that, could be an indicator that you would need my help. I mean, a
Sure.
lot of them could be if margins are declining, if profitability is declining, if you don't know how profitable you are, if you're trying to answer financially related questions or hiring related questions that you don't know how to answer, like for instance, common questions would be, can I afford to hire someone now? If so, at what wage? How should I structure their compensation? How should they have bonuses? when can I hire people? Is it profitable for me to hire another person? Are they additive to the company, or are they accretive or dilutive to earnings? Um, all all these questions and many more are questions that, or things about your business that could be happening that I could potentially help you with.
Sure.
And I've definitely worked with companies even under 1 million in revenue. You don't have to have 50 million in revenue for me to help you. Obviously, the degree and how I help you is different if you're under 1 million, but there's still, again, there's probably decisions you're making right now that dramatically affect your profitability and scalability of your company that, you don't even realize. And that's, how I start to help you, is to realize what those decisions are and then kind of walk you through the different aspects of them that you might not be seeing. You
Sure.
don't, because you don't really know what you don't know a lot of the time, especially when you first started, right? Like I didn't, I made so many mistakes as an entrepreneur, and, my hope is that I can help you, uh, prevent you from making all the mistakes that I made, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I'm really passionate about is, and along these lines, and in the realm of finance and fractional CFO stuff, is demystifying the accounting and finance function within a small business for the average business owner who doesn't have a background in it, who maybe is not trained in these things. So, help us understand from your perspective. The average business owner out there is going to have a lot of these terms rolling around in their head. They're going to know, this idea of a bookkeeper. Maybe they know controller, maybe they don't, but there are controllers in different organizations. They obviously know what their CPA does. A lot of times that's just focused around tax. So an external CPA firm. Um, what do you bring as a fractional CFO that would be different from those entities that I just named? Where does each one of those functions kind of find its sweet spot in the typical business that you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'll answer the second part of your question first. Where do those functions, sit? It really depends on. It's so varied by different, type of company. It's like, what stage of the company is it? How big is it? What type of company is it? Is it service based, or does it have a lot of raw materials or inventory, et cetera? Because a bookkeeper at a service-based company might be a very relatively straightforward, but a bookkeeper at a company with a lot of inventory, raw materials, is going to have a lot more to do because there's managing inventory, et cetera, all these SKUs.
Right.
So, I do think that the function of, let's say, bookkeeper, CPA, controller, it does vary significantly by company, and I can't like give you just some blanket statement because it's just because of the difference of industries and company sizes, et cetera. But
Yep.
one of the things that I really do think is incredibly important is that companies have good books. And what I mean by that is accurate books that are filled out on time and correctly depict the financial picture of the company. That to me is literally the very first step that I need to be true before I would even help a company. Because
Okay.
if you have crappy books and they're inaccurate, or you don't even have books, I don't even know what's going on. It's like, to me, having bad books or no books is basically like flying a plane blind. How
Yeah.
are you gonna how are you gonna know where you're going if you're flying the plane blind? You don't. And so, having these, very well put together books that are very accurate, to me, is literally step zero, because I can't analyze the numbers that I don't have.
Yep.
That's what I would say about that. And then in terms of like how I function differently than those other roles, I can certainly manage all those roles that you said if that's needed for a client. I don't prefer to do that, but I can do it. But I guess I will answer your question with a brief story about an actual client that
Sure.
I've recently have engaged with. So, and this client, interestingly, is an accountant. The CEO is an accountant and a JD and a lawyer. So, like, he's
Wow.
very, he's understands finance very well. He's very smart. I came into his company and I started, just getting to understand him and his industry and his company. And I determined in less than 2 months that there was just some mismatch between resources between his sales and marketing departments. And so I started explaining this to him, but I didn't think he really got it or it just didn't land with him. So I prepared this analysis from scratch. I didn't do any, this was not from ChatGPT or somewhere else. I literally just started with a blank Excel doc and started filling out data. And what I showed him is that by we'll just say reconfiguring the resources between his sales and marketing departments, and again, that's just, in my opinion, just making different decisions. It wasn't even like, it wouldn't even take a lot of effort. I showed him that by reconfiguring his sales and marketing resources, he could literally add an extra $500,000 of EBITDA to his company annually.
Wow.
And, he didn't even know that wasn't even on his radar to even think to do that analysis, let alone collect the data, get it together, or, do the analysis. Like it didn't even enter his mind. So I guess I can help companies do strategic analyses like that, that they don't, it doesn't even enter their mind that they should do or would know how to do. And I'm trying to help companies think on a strategic level in that regard. If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yep. Yep. No, that makes sense. It's great. Yeah, I really think you just don't know what you don't know what you don't know, and I'm hearing that come through, and certainly have learned that to some degree for myself. So I hope people will take that to heart. I think it can be a little bit hard to quantify, like probably on the initial side of things. Of like, man, why am I spending X amount of dollars per month on this guy? I really don't even know, what he's going to do. Like, who knows? I think your experience probably speaks a lot. How else do you sell it to clients typically?
Yeah, I mean, and I've gotten more, I guess, assertive with this. I'll call it. I won't call it a guarantee because it's not. I can't guarantee it. But what I tell clients is, look, I understand that working with me is an investment in your company, but nearly always I can pay for myself within
Right.
3 months of me working with you.
Wow. Yeah.
And what that means is you basically only have to pay for my fee for 3 months, and after that, I will make all those 3 months back and all future months back for you in better decisions, more profitability, more sales, better margins, et cetera, all these things combined.
Hmm.
And I've never, knock on wood, I've never told that to anyone and had them disagree with me.
Wow.
So now I can't guarantee that, right? Because you never know what you're going to run into in a business, but I feel like I'm able to do that, and deliver on that, and I feel good about it.
That's fantastic. I'm so curious about the intersection between fractional CFO and fractional integrator. For those out there who don't know maybe what you mean when you say fractional integrator, why don't you give them an idea of what that is, and then how do you integrate? Not to use the same word again, but how do you integrate the two? Uh,
Yeah. So integrator, that term comes from this. It's called EOS traction, which is, you can think of traction like an operating system for your business. And what integrator essentially means is like a COO. So I'm essentially functioning as a fractional COO when I work with companies. And these are generally, they have to be a company that's either running EOS traction or wants to run EOS traction. Well, the way I kind of describe it, and this is hard to like put in marketing copy, so I don't because it's like hard to explain succinctly. But really, because of my finance background and my operational background, my finance background was as an equity research analyst and entrepreneur of 10 companies. When I
mhm.
help a client, I'm really helping them with both finance and operations. All
Sure.
clients, even if it's a first and foremost, a fractional integrator client. And so that is what I think is very unique about my approach is I'm really looking at the company operationally and financially at the same time. And the reason that I do that is I really believe that they're very tightly integrated. Because, for instance, if I am just looking at the company financially and I say, your margins suck and you need to improve them, but I don't tell you what to do tomorrow morning to start improving those margins, is that information really helpful? No, it's not. It doesn't, because then
Mhm.
you have to guess and figure out how to improve the margins, and what to do operationally. And you might take a year to do that, or,
Right.
or many years if you don't know what to do. So I help identify the financial problems and then figure out a game plan operationally on how to improve those financial outcomes. And that's why, I'm able to help clients in a way that I think is very unique.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's really cool. That's fantastic. I know, my last question, I know that you have a lot of AI stuff on your LinkedIn profile right now, and particularly in your LinkedIn bio. I was curious about that. I wanna hear your take on where AI is making a difference for you in your practice and maybe your current favorite, application for your clients as we wrap up.
Yeah. So, oh man, there's so many things to talk about this.
Sure,
I
yeah,
really think I do think AI is the future. I think there's a lot of positives about it. However, just like I talked about with like social media and all these other technologies, I think there are also a large amount of negatives about it. So, it's not to me just this net positive that, makes everything better. I don't believe that that's true at all. Um, and I personally use it a lot for my clients. I mean, just the other day, I did a market share client analysis for a client, and I did it in like 4 or 5 hours with almost exclusively with AI, and that would have taken me like 3 or 4 days probably without it. And it was
sure.
just crazy, and it was good. It was a good output. Like it was really, I was really impressed with it, and I was just thinking like that would have, that one project right there, I mean, it was just amazing how it helped. So, I do think it's a huge tool that can be used for good, but I think we also need to be aware of some of the risks, which I won't necessarily get into today because that's a long rabbit hole.
Sure.
Um, but my favorite AI tool that I've actually been telling a lot of people about is it's called Whisper Flow, Whisper WHISPR Flow. And so with some of the AI tools like ChatGPT, when you're on your phone, you hit the button and then you talk to it and then it just keeps on listening.
Yep.
Well, Whisper Flow is like that, but it's on your computer, and then you can use it and talk in any text field anywhere in your whole computer. So you can write an email, put it in your LLM. You could put it in any other like notes fields for your CRM. Like you can use it on your entire computer. And so basically, I don't write anything out anymore. Like I don't type anything. Like that's a waste of time. You can
Wow.
talk 2 or 3 times faster than you can type, and so this has like dramatically improved like cut down on the amount of time that it takes me to enter information. And I've been using it like crazy since I got it, like a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, this is awesome. I don't know where this has been all my life, but I need this.
So it sounds like it's more than just a simple dictation tool. It probably reframes your, or it rewrites your vocalization into something that's meaningful, correct?
It
Or is it just
it writes it all out and formats it. So in other
okay?
words, like I can just speak all the text of an email and it will then, hey, it will say, hey Andrew, comma, new line, make new paragraphs. Like it spaces it all out. Like it's amazing. And it
Yeah,
knows all that from the context of what you're talking about.
unbelievable. That's exciting. I need to look into it for myself for sure. I'm always down to look into the new things like that. So, I want to do this again. This was really fun, Rob. There's so many
Yeah.
different threads we could continue to pull on this conversation. I know we have to come back to that 4-day week for the monetization side of things on the offline. But that just you're a fascinating guy. I really appreciate you generously giving this time on a Friday afternoon, and yeah, just very pleased with the advice you're able to give to the audience. So
Yeah, well, I really hope that this information was helpful. And if anyone wants to contact me about anything on this podcast, I'm happy to chat with them. You can email me. My email address is rob at humansfirst.us. I'm happy to chat with you about any specific questions that you have. And really appreciate you, Andrew, for having me on. This is really fun and grateful for the opportunity.
that's awesome. Well, until next time. Well, let's do it again.